Okay. Actually, I likewise wanted to present the mission statement of Occupy the Hood to the body as a whole so that everyone is clear about what the Occupy the Hood is about and what we are trying to do. Is that agreeable? It will take also about 2 to 3 minutes. Thank you. Occupy LA Action Assembly / Occupy the Hood. The Occupy LA Action Assembly, Occupy the Hood, is a committee affinity group formed by local community organizers who want to see Occupy LA grow as the most broadly based mass movement for social justice and change in the history of Los Angeles. For this to happen, Occupy LA must at all times be focused on reaching out to the diverse communities and neighborhoods that make up this city and its adjacent areas. In short, Occupy LA can only fulfill its mission if it moves way beyond just occupying LA City Hall and extends its vision to occupying the hoods. From Compton, Watts, and Inglewood, Torrance, Long Beach, Norwalk, Boyle Heights, Lincoln Heights, MacArthur Park, Koreatown, Little Tokyo, Chinatown, Filipino Town, the San Gabriel and San Fernando Valley areas, Silver Lake, West Hollywood, etc., etc., etc. Those of us who helped to initiate the occupation movement here in LA have said from the beginning that we are in this for the long haul. Our protests and our organizing will not end until the conditions that brought us together have been resolved. But we in the Action Assembly / Occupy the Hood are convinced that this will only happen when the broad masses of all of those who fall within the 99% have been organized and activated to fight for their essential needs. Let us not be confused by our own slogans. Those of us who are currently gathered together at City Hall are not in reality the 99%. We are only the tip of that iceberg. Now that we have secured our base here at City Hall, the organizing and activation of the bulk of the 99% must be our primary task. This organization, this activization of the 99% is the only true guarantee of our success. Because regardless of all the financial and political power in the hands of the corporations and banks, there are more of us than there are of them. But we can only utilize the strength of these numbers when we are organized, politically conscious, and active in our own behalf. It is the opinion of the initiators of the Action Assembly of Occupy LA / Occupy the Hood that now is the time for us to put out a general call to all of the 99% to join us in this great social uprising. It is time for people to come out of their homes and apartments, out from behind their computers and in front of their television sets, and finally let the world know for sure that they're mad as hell and won't take it anymore. It is time to occupy the schools, the community centers, and the parks. It is time to occupy the hospitals and the health centers. It is time to occupy the workplaces. It is time to occupy the banks, the gas stations, and the quick loan stores. In short, it's time to occupy every institution that's been ripping people off and every institution and community service that has been cut. It is time to demand that the rip-offs end and that the services to our communities be restored and expanded. It is time to demand that every single corrupt corporate criminal be tried and imprisoned to the fullest extent of the law. It is time to bounce every corrupt, unaccountable politician right out of office. It is time for the voice of the people to be heard. In all of this, every step of the way, the occupation movement, which is a movement founded on principles of social justice, must always and everywhere commit itself to fighting for those who have been most severely hit by the abuses of corporate power. There are some communities in America where unemployment, homelessness, declining wages, and substandard health conditions are 3 and 4 times the national average and have been for many years, long before the economic crisis even came into play. By and large, these are communities of color, Native American, African American, and Mexican American, supplemented by various non-white immigrant communities. But even though many of these hardest hit communities are communities of color, this is not exclusively a problem delineated by race or ethnicity. Corporate power has long since crossed the color line, and it's the destructiveness of its social, economic, and political practices. Ultimately, the corporate system is no respecter of persons, whatever their color is, any more than as a respecter of our earth or the ecosphere. All are to be sacrificed to the great god, money. The Action Committee stands by the basic principles of the Occupy movement, especially the first 5 points of the principles of solidarity. 1, engaging in direct and transparent participatory democracy. 2, exercising personal and collective responsibility. 3, recognizing individuals' inherent privilege and the influence it has on all interactions. 4, empowering one another against all forms of oppression. 5, redefining how labor is valued. Furthermore, we stand for 1, racial justice and an end to racism in all forms, including anti-immigrant racism. 2, women's rights and an end to sexism of all types. 3, economic justice and a more equitable distribution of wealth, the abolition of poverty and homelessness. 4, social recognition and equal rights for the LGBT communities and end to homophobia. 5, workers' rights in the workplace, especially the right to collective bargaining and the right to belong to a union. 6, equal rights for people with disabilities, especially the right to equal access, along with social recognition and end to stigmatization. We call for a fight back to the cuts in home social services, SSI, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, housing, and general relief. 7, equality of rights and self-determination of oppressed nationalities and ethnic groups. 8, an end to the prison industrial complex, mass incarceration and criminalization of an entire generation of mostly minority youths who are actually the prime victims of a declining capitalism and the new corporate state. No, I asked for this and they said yes. 9, we call for an end to government destruction and subversion of popular movements, harassment and repression of political dissidents, and the immediate release of all political prisoners. 10, we call for an immediate end to the death penalty and to the use of torture in all U.S. penal institutions from Guantanamo Bay to Pelican Bay. 11, we call for an end to all policies that lead to and support covert and overt U.S. wars, military occupations, colonialism, neocolonialism, and other forms of economic, political, and military manipulation or domination of other countries. All such policies are merely the expression of corporate domination of our own society taken to the international level. They are designed to enrich these corporations and their owners at the expense of the peoples of other countries through the naked exploitation and looting of their land, labor, and natural resources. These are, in fact, policies of imperialism. And we, the 99%, do not support imperialism. We believe in freedom, justice, and equality of all nations and peoples. In line with this, among other things, we call upon all Americans who fall within the 99% to act responsibly to ensure that their personal resources, pensions, and other retirement funds are not contributing to the exploitation, oppression, and disenfranchisement of the peoples of other countries. We call for mass disinvestment of the 99% from all corporations, banks, and investment schemes that contribute to this unconscionable situation. 12, we call for an immediate end to the U.S. wars and military incursions in Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, and other nations. We oppose the current U.S. military threats against Iran and troop deployments in Central Africa. 13, we call to an end to the war at home, that is, in the broadest sense, the social, economic, political, and even physical attacks being conducted against the 99% in the interest of the 1%. But most particularly, we oppose the rising tide of police violence and repression, which has been running rampant in communities of color throughout the United States for many years. This same violence is currently being extended to nonviolent protesters connected with the occupation movement in many parts of the country and other political dissidents who are challenging the status quo. This is nothing but a form of mass terrorism designed to discourage and repress efforts by the citizenry to assert their civil, economic, and human rights. We call on the entire 99% to unite to bring an end to the war at home. Finally, we strongly condemn the series of international trade agreements that have been designed to undermine the position of American working people and at the same time ensnare lesser developed nations in a permanent semi-colonial relationship to the more developed capitalist nations. We fully support the call of the non-aligned movement and the nations of the South for a new international economic order based on equity, cooperative economics, and respect for our Earth and our global environment. We call for the cancellation of supposed debts of all third world and fourth world nations, as these nations have all been looted and robbed shamelessly by the so-called developed nations for the past 500 years, and frankly, are due massive reparations for the damage which those developed countries have inflicted on their economies, their culture, and the physical existence of their people as such. These are the basic principles of the Action Assembly / Occupy the Hood. Our basic decision-making process is a modified approach to consensus decision-making. This is for speed and clarity of decision-making, and because we believe this approach is more user-friendly for community people who come in hoping to get action that helps them with immediate problems. The Action Assembly, I'm about to wrap up, in addition to adhering what we call the justice principles, works to establish close relationships with special affinity groups formed to address the special needs of various oppressed ethnic and nationality groups, women, youth, seniors, sexual minorities, and people with disabilities. We want the kind of communication and relationship in order to ensure that we're maximally aware of the problems, concerns, and outlooks of such groups. We also work with the Action Committee and the other committees and the General Assembly because we want to unify this movement, not fissure it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for Brother's words. That was really great. But really, we do need to keep these really brief because we have a lot of other